ready for lesson 8.2. We're going over proportions. So look in your book on page 171. Yesterday or earlier today, whenever you did lesson 8.1, we started talking about ratios and rates. Today we're going to learn about proportions. So look there in the middle of the page underneath 8.2. It says, notice how the ratio between the height and length of these rectangles, 2/4 and 4/8, both reduce to the same fraction, half. Now, I'm sure you can tell, but I'm going to do this up here just in case. Okay, so they have, on that page, they have two different rectangles. Now, they say that, let's see, this and this, and then this and this. Okay, they say that these are the same, it doesn't say what unit, but let's just say 2 inches and 4 inches, but it, like I said, it doesn't say. And then they say that this one is 4 and this one is 8. Now what they're saying is, notice that the relationship between the same sides of a different rectangle, right here, the same sides of different rectangles, each one of those 2/4 simplifies to a half, and so does 4/8. Okay, notice that. Okay, does that make sense to you? All right, so even though these rectangles are different sizes, the ratios between their sides are the same. In both rectangles, one side is half the side of the other. Do you notice that? On this big one, this side is half the side, half the length, or half the unit of this one. And so is this one. They're different sizes, but they're the same ratio. We call two equal ratios a proportion. So these would be considered proportions. Both ratios in a proportion are equivalent fractions. They represent the same relationship between two quantities. So the proportion that you would use, or the ratio, I guess you might say, would be for these two is this. So this is a proportion because both of these ratios are the same. They're equivalent. Make sense? All right, that's what we call a proportion. Whoops. Well, sure you just get a kick out of watching me erase everything all the time. All right, let's move on. Look at the gray box. Now, as you may have noticed, mathematicians like to give names to different parts of equations. Names help us communicate clearly. It's a lot easier to say go to Susan's grocery store than to say go to the place where they sell food that's down the street and to the left. In a similar way, it's a lot easier to use specific words to describe parts of equations. The terms extremes and means are the names typically used to refer to different parts of a proportion. And there you have it at the bottom. You can make a note of that if you want to. Frankly, I haven't looked ahead to see if it's on the quiz or test or anything, but you might want to make a note of that just to show what the names are. Now, if you think about a division problem, you know that this is the dividend. I'm not going to spell it out. The dividend divided by the divisor, and then this is the quotient. Okay? It's easier to say what's the quotient rather than to say what's the answer that goes on top of the box of a division problem. That's what they're saying. So I just want you to kind of put that together. Okay. Now let's turn the page, 172. Now proportions often help us solve real life problems. Say you were planning a party, and according to the package, you need 2 quarts of lemonade for every 8 people. If you expect 96 people to attend the party, how many quarts of lemonade should you make? So they're going to make a ratio. All right, so here you know the ratio of lemonade for 8 people. So look right below there, they put 2 quarts to 8 people. You see where they wrote that? 2 quart, I'm going to abbreviate, 2 quarts to 8 people. Okay, now you want to keep that same ratio with 96 people. Okay, so we're going to put 96 down here because the bottom includes the people. Okay, so this is what we don't know. How many quarts? Okay, see how they set that proportion up? Okay, so that's what we need to figure out. So basically how you figure that out is you think, okay, well, how do you get from 8 to 96? What do you have to do here? You know? multiply by 12, right? So whatever you do on the bottom, you got to do on the top, or whatever you do on the top, you got to do on the bottom. So what is 2 times 12? 24. So this would be your new ratio. 24 quarts would make enough for 96 people. Okay, that's how they wrote that out. All right, so now we're going to look at another example right quick, and this one's on the bottom of your page. I guess it's almost toward the bottom. It says, let's take another example. Suppose we want to find the missing number in this proportion. So you have 21 to 3 equals 7 to something. Okay, so figure out what's the relationship up top. 21, the only way to get from 21 to 7 is to divide by 3. So whatever you do on top, you got to do on the bottom. Look now at the top of page 173. So the only way you can do that is divide by 3. So whatever you do on top, you got to do on the bottom. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. So now it says you've completed your proportion. 21 to 3 is the same as 7 to 1. Make sense? Look where it says comparing ratios. If a recipe calls for 2 cups of spinach and 7 cups of water, and someone put in 9 cups of spinach and 23 cups of water, did he keep the ratio between spinach and water the same? It's easy to tell. Just write it down. The ratio of spinach to water is 2 to 7. The ratio of spinach to water that they did was 9 to 23. So look where they put 2 to 7 and 9 to 23. You can't do anything to get from 2 to 9 or from 7 to 23. So that means that those proportions are unequal. So they put the unequal symbol. Remember this? It means not equal or unequal. Okay? And then you can even divide 2 divided by 7 to get the decimal, which is 0.29, and the same for 9 to 23 and get 0.39. And you can see by that they're not the same. They're not equal. Doesn't really matter how you figure it out. The important thing is just to see if the two ratios are equal. Equal is equal, regardless of the notation. So ratios and proportions are tools we're going to be using over and over and over again. As we continue our mathematical explorations, we'll use them to draw scale drawings, convert between units of measure, and even find the height of a tree. So this is something that we're going to be using for a good while. It's a skill that you really need to hone in on. All right, so let's look at the worksheet. It's 8.2. It's much shorter than the 8.1, and it's much easier. Now, again, I'm going to help you on this first part, on some of these, just to kind of get you going. So on part 1 on 8.2, let's take C, for example. So 7 to, we don't know, equals 14 to 58. So all of these are proportions. They are equal. You just have to find the missing number. So basically, how do you get from 7 to 14? You start with what you know. You multiply by 2, right? Okay, so that means this one's a little bit tricky. Let me put it up here. 14 to 58. You may already have figured it out, but if not, okay. Now, to get from here to here, we have to multiply by 2, okay? Remember, you have to do whatever you do on the top. You got to do on the bottom because remember, it has to be the same, okay? But there's nothing here to multiply by 2. But we have the answer, so we're going to take 58 and divide by 2. That would undo this and tell us what that is. So you would do the division, and that's the number that would go here. That would be the missing number. All right, look at part 2, representing proportions. It says make sure you include the units. So anytime you're working with something that has a unit to it, inches, or on this one's passengers, or bushels, or quarts, or whatever, make sure you label those things. Those are important. So 38 passengers per 1 roller coaster ride. 380 passengers per 10 roller coaster rides. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to write those down like this, okay? Of course, not with these, but you're going to write the numbers down. Make sure you label everything, and whatever is up here, they have to be the same. If you put passengers up here, then both numbers up top have to be passengers. If you put roller coaster rides on bottom, both roller coaster has to be on the bottom. Okay, so you're just going to label those. You don't have to work anything, just label those proportions. Okay, you can also do it with the colons. Don't forget that. All right, now on part 3, finding the missing number in a proportion, you can use your calculator on these. So you're going to write on number 3, A, B, and on the back, C and D. You're going to write the proportions. They're going to end up looking like these. You're going to have a blank spot somewhere, and you're going to have to figure out what it is. Okay? It's pretty easy. All right, on part 4, A, B, and C, you're either going to put equal or not equal. All right, and then the rest of those are just skill sharpening, practice, and things such as that. I'm going to grade this, and this page is going to be worth 18 points. Please let me know if you need help, and that's all for today.